1997, Sun River Valley, Montana, 45 miles west of Great Falls. Frost on cottonwoods. Pivot circles silent. A gate chain, 124,000 acres. 3,500 cows. 25,000 tons of alfalfa. 13,000 irrigated acres. 20 miles of river. 27 houses. Impressive. But the river doesn't belong to the ranch. It belongs to the federal government, the irrigation district, the water court. Every drop is permission they must defend. Is this the perfected machine, capital, water, and scale aligned into permanent production? Or is it a house of cards where one failed gearbox, one drought year, one adjudication loss brings the whole system down? If you enjoy deep dives into historic ranch empires, please like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments which ranch I should explore next. Chapter 1. The river that made the numbers possible. The Sun River runs east from the Rocky Mountain front, crosses the high prairie, and slows into the Missouri. For most of Montana history, it was a seasonal river. Spring flood, summer trickle, winter ice, then nothing but grass and dust. The valley was cattle country before irrigation, but it was thin cattle country, sparse grass, long winters, brutal storms that could wipe out half a herd in a week. The land report traced one early operation back to the 1890s. Daniel Flowery and Lowry Cattle Company. The company reportedly ran up to 40,000 head before a series of brutal winters devastated the herd. The numbers are historical claims. The lesson is clear. Without water infrastructure, the valley is fragile. Then the government built Gibson Dam, 1926 to 1929, concrete arch dam, 214 feet high, Pishkoon Reservoir behind it, spillway capacity designed for flood control and irrigation delivery. The dam was part of the Sun River Project, a federal reclamation effort to turn semi-arid grassland into productive farmland. The project includes multiple diversion dams, main canals, lateral ditches, and smaller reservoirs. It irrigates roughly 91,000 acres today. Wheat, barley, alfalfa, the crops that turn water into money. The Broken O sits at the heart of that system. The ranch headquarters perch along State Highway 21 between the towns of Sims and Augusta, Lewis and Clark County to the south, Cascade County through the middle, Teton County to the north. 3 counties, 1 river, 20 miles of cottonwood corridor cutting through native range and irrigated crop ground. The 2 core hubs are the cattle division and the farming division. They sit about 2 miles apart along the highway. Each division has its own infrastructure, its own rhythm, its own crew. But both depend on the river. This is not dryland wheat country. This is not open range. This is industrial agriculture wearing a postcard. The river is the artery. The pivots are the heart. The numbers are the proof. The ranch markets itself with recreation language. Brown trout, rainbow trout, pronghorn, mule deer, whitetail, upland birds, waterfowl, 20 miles of fishable river, wildlife and water as the visible assets. But the back-of-house reality runs on different numbers. Water rights, irrigation schedules, change applications, adjudication processes. The paperwork runs deep. The Sun River made the ranch possible, but it also made the ranch dependent. Every acre of irrigated hay depends on upstream snow. Every pivot circle depends on reservoir releases. Every feedlot pen depends on the grain those pivots grow. A ranch can buy land. It cannot buy more snowpack. Chapter 2. Paint money and 20 blocks of grass. The modern broken O was assembled by William E. Moore and Desiree B. Moore. Kelley-Moore Paint Company. Urban money. West Coast capital, looking for grass and water and a story to tell. 1988. The Moores bought what locals knew as the Hamilton Ranch. The Hamilton family had owned it since 1945. John Hamilton, Hamilton Beach Appliances. Another industrial fortune converted into Montana land. The Moores did not stop with the Hamilton purchase. They kept buying. Over 2 decades, they acquired more than 20 separate blocks of land and stitched them into a single holding. Native range, pivot ground, dryland wheat, riparian corridor, state lease parcels, Bureau of Land Management allotments. Each purchase required negotiation. Each parcel had its own history, its own fences, its own water claims, its own debts. The assembly was not a single transaction. It was a campaign, a county recorder's office in Great Falls, Moore and Freeman reviewing plat maps, tracing property lines, checking for liens, identifying the next block. The clerk pulls another deed book. The campaign continues. By the time the Moores stopped buying, the ranch covered roughly 124,000 acres, 108,571 deeded, 15,270 state lease, 160 Bureau of Land Management lease. Dan Freeman ran the operation. Freeman came from a local ranching family. He knew the valley, he knew the people, he knew where the water ran and where it did not. Sale materials described him as Bill Moore's right-hand man. Media coverage portrayed him as the person who brought Moore's vision to scale. The Moores planted native grasses on degraded pastures. They placed 3 conservation easements on roughly 9,700 acres along the Sun River corridor. The easements were placed in 1995, 1997, and 1998. Montana Land Reliance holds them. They protect working agricultural use and wildlife habitat. They also lock the land into agriculture permanently. The Moores built a 5,000-head feedlot. They built an on-ranch feed mill with grain bins and storage buildings. They installed center pivot irrigation systems across more than 11,000 acres. They brought in equipment. They hired crews. They built housing. The ranch became vertically integrated. Calves born on grass, finished in pens, fed from bins filled with ranch-grown grain and hay. The loop closed. The margin stayed internal. This was not restoration. This was construction. Capital converted into infrastructure. Infrastructure converted into production. Production converted into asset value. The Moores became community anchors. They funded a community center in Augusta, donated to local schools and charities. A school board meeting. The superintendent thanks the Moore family for new bleachers, for library books, for the science lab upgrade. The board votes. The ranch families are watching. Goodwill matters in small towns, especially when your ranch employs 25 families. But goodwill does not pay bills. The ranch required constant investment, pivot maintenance, canal repairs, equipment replacement, payroll, utilities, taxes. The carrying costs were large. The Moores built a machine. The question was whether the machine could outlast them. Chapter 3. 13,000 acres. That drink water is the engine. Without irrigation, the Sun River Valley grows sparse grass and thin wheat. With irrigation, it grows money. The Broken O irrigates roughly 13,000 acres. The land report called it the largest amount of irrigated farmland in Montana. That scale is the ranch's defining feature and its primary constraint. The irrigation footprint breaks down into categories. 11,600 acres under center pivots, 1,317 acres under wheel line systems, 200 acres of flood-irrigated hay ground, another 662 acres of pivot-irrigated crop ground on state lease. Center pivots are the visible signature of modern irrigation: steel towers on wheels, electric motors, gearboxes, quarter-mile arms sweeping perfect circles. At night, the sprinklers catch moonlight. During the day, they throw rainbows. From the air, they look like green coins stamped onto brown prairie. Each pivot requires infrastructure beneath the surface: buried mainline pipe, booster pumps, pressure regulators, control panels, electric service. The hardware is expensive. The maintenance is constant. 2 in the morning, an irrigator drives the perimeter road, checks pivot 12, listens for the motor hum, watches the sprinkler pattern in the headlights. Everything running. Drives to pivot 13, checks 14, checks 15, 6 more to go, radio on, thermos of coffee. Dawn is 4 hours away. Wheel line systems are older technology. Aluminum pipe sections connected by joints. The pipe rolls on wheels. Workers move the line by hand or with a small engine. Wheel lines are labor-intensive but cheaper than pivots. They work for smaller fields or irregular shapes. Flood irrigation is the oldest method. Water diverted from the river or a canal flows across the field by gravity. It requires grading. It requires ditches. It requires timing. Too much water and you drown the crop. Too little and you waste the application. The ranch also manages 6,000 acres of improved pasture. These are pastures that have been reseeded with crested wheatgrass or other high-protein grasses. They provide early-season grazing for cattle before native range greens up. Improved pastures are not irrigated, but they require maintenance, fencing, weed control, reseeding when stands thin out. 3,000 acres are dryland crops. These fields depend entirely on rainfall. The ranch runs them on a summer fallow rotation. Half the acreage is planted each year. The other half rests. The fallow fields store moisture for the following year's crop. In good years, dryland wheat can yield 50 bushels per acre. In bad years, 25. Some years, nothing. But the core output comes from the irrigated block: 25,000 tons of alfalfa hay, 700,000 bushels of small grains, historic production figures from sale documents and media coverage. 25,000 tons of alfalfa means roughly 2,000 loads hauled and stacked. Each load is a trip. Each trip is fuel and labor. Each stack is inventory waiting to be fed. 700,000 bushels of grain is a river of barley and wheat. It fills bins. It feeds cattle. It gets sold when the price is right, or it sits when the price is wrong. Grain storage is its own management challenge: aeration, temperature control, pest management, spoilage risk. That scale requires infrastructure beyond the pivots. Grain bins at the farming division, feed warehouse, feed mill with mixing equipment, hay sheds, equipment sheds, shop buildings, fuel tanks, parts inventory. It also requires logistics: soil testing on a 3-year rotation, annual farm plans developed with an agronomist and the ranch manager, seed purchases, fertilizer applications, herbicide timing, harvest schedules coordinated with weather and market windows. Purchase records show the ranch's irrigated acreage is tied to change applications filed with the Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation. Change applications are bureaucratic instruments. They ask permission to modify existing water rights, change the point of diversion, change the place of use, change the purpose of use. Change applications. require maps, affidavits, engineering reports, hydrological studies, legal descriptions. They trigger notice requirements. Adjacent landowners get copies. Irrigation districts get copies. Anyone with standing can object. Objections require responses. Responses require evidence. Evidence requires experts. Experts cost money. The ranch's irrigation system works, but it works under constraint. Water rights must be defended. Infrastructure must be maintained. Power must be paid for. Crops must hit yield targets. The system has no slack. The ranch also maintains 200 acres of flood-irrigated hay ground. This is the oldest irrigation technology. Water diverted directly from the river or from a canal. It flows across the field by gravity. It requires precise grading. Too much slope and the water rushes. Too little and it pools. The field must be leveled. Berms must be built. Ditches must be maintained. Flood irrigation is labor-intensive. Someone must be present when water arrives. Someone must open gates. Someone must move canvas dams or wooden boards to redirect flow. Someone must watch for breakthroughs or channeling. Someone must close gates when the application is complete. The timing is dictated by the irrigation district schedule. Miss your turn, and you wait days for the next allocation. Early morning. An irrigator walks the hayfield with a shovel. Water flows from the ditch. He breaks a small dam to redirect the flow, watches it spread, checks for low spots, rebuilds the dam when the section is covered, moves to the next check. 6 hours to water 40 acres. But flood irrigation uses no electricity, no pumps, no pivots, no motors, just gravity, just water, just attention. It is the cheapest method in terms of operating cost, but the most expensive in terms of labor and land preparation. The combination of irrigation methods shows the ranch's evolution. Flood irrigation from the early era, wheel lines from mid-century, center pivots from the modern build-out. Each technology layer represents capital investment. Each layer requires different maintenance. Each layer has different efficiency. Each layer tells a story of how irrigation intensified over decades. A ranch can irrigate 13,000 acres, but it cannot irrigate them cheaply, and it cannot irrigate them without constant vigilance. The water must be managed, the equipment must be maintained, the power must be paid for, the applications must be timed, the crops must respond, the yields must justify the investment. Every irrigated acre is a BET, a BET that water will arrive, a BET that equipment will function, a BET that electricity will remain affordable, a BET that weather will cooperate, a BET that markets will reward production, a BET that next year will resemble this year. Most years the bets pay off. Some years they do not. The ranch lives in the gap between those outcomes. Chapter 4. The Bunkhouse. Math: a ranch this size does not run on family labor. It runs on payroll, housing, coordination, hierarchy. Sale documents cite 36 full-time employees plus 4 to 5 seasonal workers during calving and irrigation. Another reference in the same materials put the number at 25 families. A third cited 25 full-time ranch hands plus additional seasonal help. The numbers vary slightly, but the scale is consistent. This is a crew operation, 30 to 40 people on payroll at any given time, more during peak seasons, housing for 24 families or more. The ranch maintains about 27 residences. 24 were occupied by full-time employees at the time of listing. These are not bunkhouses, these are houses, with kitchens, with bedrooms, with utilities. Some are newer, some are older. All require maintenance. Augusta and Sims feel the ripple. School enrollment, grocery runs, clinic visits, hardware store receipts, bank accounts. The ranch is not just an employer. It is a demographic force. Marketing materials reference as many as 25 families on payroll, with knock-on effects on local services and schools. Job categories are implied by the operation, but not detailed in the listing. Ranch manager, agronomist, cow boss or foreman, irrigators who check pivots and manage water deliveries, equipment operators who run tractors, swathers, balers, combines, and grain trucks, mechanics and welders who keep the fleet running, feedlot crew who mix rations, push feed and process cattle, calving crew who pull calves and tag newborns, administrative staff who handle payroll, purchasing, and record-keeping. Each role requires training. Each role has seasonal intensity. Spring calving drives one staffing surge. Cows start dropping calves in late winter. The crew works around the clock, checking heifers, assisting difficult births, tagging and vaccinating calves, moving pairs to pasture. Summer irrigation drives another surge. Pivots must be checked daily. Wheel lines must be moved. Flood irrigation requires timing with canal deliveries. Equipment breaks. Motors fail. Gearboxes seize. Lightning strikes control panels. The irrigators fix what they can and call in specialists for what they cannot. Harvest season pulls everyone into the rhythm. Alfalfa gets multiple cuttings per year. First cutting in late spring, second cutting in midsummer, third cutting in early fall if water and weather allow. Each cutting is a race against rain. Mow, condition, let it dry. Rake into windrows, bale, haul, stack, repeat. Small grains harvest in late summer. Wheat and barley are direct cut with combines. Grain trucks haul loads to the bins. Bins must be filled in sequence. Moisture must be monitored. Augers must be cleaned between crops to avoid contamination. Then winter feeding begins. Hay is pulled from stacks and hauled to feed grounds or pushed out to cattle on range. The feedlot gets mixed rations delivered daily. Cattle are weighed and sorted. Sick animals are pulled and treated. The cycle resets. Wage rates are not disclosed. Benefits packages are not detailed. Housing rent policies are not specified. These details stay internal. But the housing count tells part of the story. 27 houses means 27 utility connections, 27 septic systems or sewer hookups, 27 water sources, 27 roofs that leak eventually, 27 furnaces that fail in January, 27 properties that accumulate deferred maintenance. January. A furnace quits in house 14. The family calls the ranch office. The mechanic drives over, pulls the igniter. Dead. No spare on hand. Hardware store in Great Falls. 2-hour round trip. The family waits. Space heater borrowed from the shop. The mechanic returns, installs the part. Heat comes back. On to the next call. Housing is overhead. It is also necessity. A ranch cannot run if the crew lives an hour away. School buses do not reach remote pastures. Winter roads drift shut. You need people on site. You need them housed. You need them retained. Turnover is costly. A new irrigator does not know the system. A new feedlot hand does not know the cattle. A new mechanic does not know which parts fit which machines. Experience matters. Retention matters. Housing matters. The land report noted that due diligence for the sale included background information on 27 houses. That phrase is revealing. Background information means condition reports, maintenance histories, occupancy status, possibly tenant backgrounds if employment housing involves lease agreements. The buyer needed to know what they were inheriting, not just land, not just cattle, people and infrastructure. A ranch with 36 employees is a small organization. It has hierarchy, it has politics, it has personalities. Management must balance production pressure with crew morale. Push too hard and people quit. Push too soft and numbers slip. The listing framed the staffing as an asset. Turnkey operation, trained crew, systems in place. But staffing is also risk. Key people leave. Knowledge walks out the door. Replacements take time to find and train. Gaps appear in the operation. The bunkhouse math is simple. People cost money. But without people, the ranch is just land. Chapter 5. 3,500 mothers. The cattle operation is cow-calf to finish. Full cycle. Replacement heifers, range bulls, feedlot, all contained within the ranch boundary. At the time of sale, the ranch carried 3,500 mother cows, 800 replacement heifers, 175 range bulls selected by expected progeny differences and kept through roughly 6 breeding years. 3,500 cows is a large commercial herd. Not King Ranch scale, not Texas scale, but large for Montana. Large enough to require division into management units, large enough to require multiple pastures, multiple water sources, multiple calving areas. The breeding cycle starts when bulls turn in with the cows. The timing varies by pasture and management strategy. Some ranchers use a tight breeding season to produce a uniform calf crop. Others stretch the season to spread calving labor. The listing did not specify the breeding season length, but it noted that bulls are selected by expected progeny differences, which means genetic selection for growth, carcass quality, and maternal traits. Bulls are kept roughly 6 breeding years. That means turnover. New bulls purchased or raised. Old bulls culled and sold. Bull selection is a cost center. A good range bull can cost several $1,000s. Multiply that by 175 bulls, and the investment becomes significant. Then add in bull feed, bull health protocols, and bull pasture maintenance. Calving happens on grass. Improved pastures with crested wheatgrass provide early-season protein and weight gain. Cows move on to improved pastures in spring before native range greens up. The higher protein helps cows milk better and helps calves grow faster. 3 in the morning. The calving crew checks heifers in the holding pen. Flashlights, 1 heifer down, calf presenting wrong. They move her to the chute, pull chains attached, slow, steady pressure. The calf comes, clears its nose, breathes. Tag applied. Iodine on the navel. Heifer released back to pen. Crew moves to the next check. Replacement heifers get special management. Broker materials describe grazing on sub-irrigated brome and fescue pastures before moving to higher protein grasses like western wheatgrass and sainfoin. Then they summer on the Harris unit from mid-June to October. The unit is a separate management block, 8,364 deeded acres of native range, 1,480 acres of state lease native range. Total grazing capacity listed as 381 animal unit months on the state lease. The unit sits about a mile north of the main ranch. It has its own water sources, Roundup coulee, springs and ponds, and 2 backup stock wells for dry years. The Harris unit functions as a single large pasture. Heifers go in as pairs in mid-June. They stay through summer. They come out in October. The unit then sits empty through winter and spring, simple, low input, but essential for heifer development. Calf management after weaning splits into two streams. Replacement heifers stay on the ranch and enter the breeding herd. Market calves move to the feedlot for finishing. The selection process for replacements is critical. Heifers are evaluated for conformation, growth rate, temperament, and maternal genetics. The best heifers are kept. The rest are sold. Selection pressure determines future herd quality. Select too lightly, and poor genetics persist. Select too heavily, and you reduce numbers and revenue from cull heifer sales. Replacement heifers require special nutrition and management. They must reach target breeding weight, typically 85% of mature cow weight. For a breed that averages 1,200 pounds at maturity, that means heifers must reach around 1,020 pounds before breeding. Underweight heifers have lower conception rates. They have more calving difficulty. They rebreed poorly after their first calf. The listing emphasized that replacement heifers graze sub-irrigated brome and fescue pastures before moving to western wheatgrass and sainfoin. This is intentional nutrition management. Brome and fescue are high-quality forages. They provide protein and energy. They support growth. The heifers gain weight on these pastures before transitioning to native range. Western wheatgrass and sainfoin are native and adapted forages. They are more drought-tolerant. They are lower in protein than improved pastures, but they are sufficient for maintenance and continued growth in heifers that have already achieved good body condition. The transition from improved pasture to native range is a test. Heifers that maintain condition on native range are hardy. They will perform well as mature cows. Heifers that lose condition may need culling. The pasture sequence is a selection filter as much as a nutrition program. Market calves follow a different path. They are weaned. They are sorted by weight and quality. They enter the feedlot. The feedlot ration is designed for rapid gain with high energy, moderate protein, and balanced minerals. The goal is to finish cattle to choice or prime grade in the shortest time possible. The ranch markets its calves as having strong genetics and performance. That marketing claim is backed by decades of selection and by the nutrition program. Calves that gain well on grass and grain command premium prices. Feeders and packers pay more for cattle that are predictable. Predictable means uniform. Uniform means consistent breeding. Consistent breeding means controlled genetics and tight management. The listing noted that calves are typically sold to feeders and packers in Montana and the Midwest. That regional market access is important. Transportation costs rise with distance. A ranch that can market calves within a few hundred miles saves money. It also reduces shrink. Shrink is weight loss during transport. Less shrink means more saleable weight. More saleable weight means more revenue. But the listing did not cite specific sale prices. It did not detail whether calves are sold on a live weight basis, on a dressed carcass weight basis, or through value-added programs. These details are operational. They change with markets. They reflect management decisions made year by year. Publish them in a listing, and they are out of date before the sale closes. Cow-calf operations have tight margins. Revenue comes once a year when calves sell. Costs accumulate daily: feed, hay, mineral, veterinary, labor, fuel, repairs. The math only works if calf prices stay strong and if calf weights hit targets. A weak market or a light calf crop can erase a year's profit. The ranch also faces biological risk: disease, drought, predation, winter kill, calving complications. Each risk requires mitigation: vaccination protocols, predator management, winter feed reserves, veterinary standby during calving. The listing did not detail veterinary protocols or health management programs. It did not specify vaccination schedules or antibiotic use policies. These decisions stay operational, but they shape outcomes. Healthy cattle grow faster. Sick cattle cost money and gain slowly or not at all. 3,500 cows also means 3,500 individual animals to track. Ear tags, brands, records, breeding dates, calving dates, weaning weights, health treatments. Each cow has a history. Lose the records, and you lose management control. The cow herd is the ranch's biological engine. It converts grass into calves, calves into revenue, revenue into operating capital. But the engine requires constant attention. Cows do not manage themselves. Chapter 6. Where feed becomes flesh. The feedlot is the industrial back end of the cattle cycle. Dirt pens, concrete aprons, steel gates, feed bunks in long straight lines. 5,000 head capacity is not boutique. It is throughput. It is efficiency. It is cattle turned into carcass weight at scale. Calves arrive as stockers. They weigh 600 to 800 pounds. They leave as finished beef at 1,200 to 1,400 pounds. The interval is measured in days on feed. Average daily gain, feed conversion ratios, pounds of feed per pound of gain. Performance data shows gain rates of 3¼ to 3¾ pounds per day. That is solid performance. It requires good genetics. It requires balanced rations. It requires consistent feed delivery. It requires health management. The on-ranch feed mill makes the feedlot possible. Grain bins store barley and wheat grown on the ranch. Hay sheds hold alfalfa bales cut from irrigated circles. The mill mixes rations according to formulas developed by nutritionists or based on decades of trial and error. Trucks haul loads to the pens. Feed is pushed into bunks. Cattle eat. Cattle gain. The feed mill includes grain bins and a feed warehouse. The exact capacity is not specified in the listing, but handling 700,000 bushels of grain annually implies significant storage, multiple bins, multiple handling systems, augers, conveyors, scales. Feed mixing is both art and science. Too much grain and cattle get acidosis. Too little and gain slows. Protein balance matters. Energy balance matters. Mineral supplementation matters. The ratios change as cattle progress through the feeding period. Starter rations, grower rations, finisher rations. Each phase has different nutritional targets. The feedlot also requires waste management. 5,000 head of cattle produce manure. Lots of manure. Daily. The listing did not specify manure handling systems, but options are limited. Scrape and haul to composting areas. Scrape and spread on crop ground. Let it accumulate and clean periodically. Each method has costs and environmental implications. Feedlot cattle also require water. Automatic waterers. Tank heaters in winter. Water lines that do not freeze. Water quality that does not sicken animals. Water systems are another layer of infrastructure and maintenance. Veterinary management in a feedlot is different from range management. Cattle are confined. Disease spreads faster. Respiratory issues are common. Sick cattle must be pulled quickly, treated, isolated if necessary, returned to pens when recovered. The listing did not detail sick pen protocols or veterinary contractor schedules. But a 5,000 head feedlot without a veterinary program is a disaster waiting to happen. Dawn in the pull pen. A feedlot, hand, ropes a steer showing labored breathing. walks it to the chute. The vet checks temperature, respiratory infection, antibiotic injection, ear tag marked, moved to the hospital pen. The hand returns to check the next group. Mortality happens. Cattle die. Accident, disease, weather, unknown causes. A 2% death loss in a 5,000-head feedlot means 100 dead cattle per year. Dead cattle must be disposed of. Rendering services, composting, burial. Each method requires permits and logistics. The feedlot is also a regulatory target. Concentrated animal feeding operations face environmental scrutiny, manure runoff, water pollution, air quality, odor complaints. The listing referenced DEQ permits in the due diligence documentation. That means the State Department of Environmental Quality has oversight. Permits require compliance. Compliance requires monitoring and reporting. The feedlot proves vertical integration, but it also concentrates risk. Feed costs fluctuate. Cattle prices fluctuate. The margin is the spread between input costs and sale revenue. When the spread narrows, the feedlot loses money. When the spread widens, it makes money. But the feedlot cannot stop. Cattle are in the pens. They must be fed. They must be finished. They must be sold. The cycle does not pause for bad markets. What the feedlot shows is commitment to a model. Grow your feed. Finish your calves. Capture the margin. But the model only works if all the pieces align. Crop yields, cattle health, market timing. One weak link and the whole system underperforms. Cows on grass for the marketing, cattle on concrete for the margins. Both are necessary. Neither is sufficient alone. Chapter 7. The pivot problem. The pivots are the crown jewel and the vulnerability. 11,600 acres under center pivot irrigation, steel towers, electric motors, gearboxes, drive trains, end guns, control panels, buried mainline pipe, booster pumps. The system is elegant in concept. Water enters the mainline at high pressure. It flows through the buried pipe to the pivot center. It rises through the vertical riser pipe. It enters the pivot lateral, which is the long horizontal arm suspended on steel towers. The lateral has sprinkler nozzles spaced along its length. The towers roll slowly on wheels, driven by electric motors. The arm sweeps a circle. The sprinklers deposit water. The crop grows. But the system is fragile in practice. Every component can fail. Motors burn out. Bearings seize. Gearboxes crack. Drive shafts break. Tires go flat. Wheels get stuck in mud. Control panels get fried by lightning. End guns clog. Nozzles plug. Pipes leak. Electrical connections corrode. Operating records show $275,000 annually for irrigation electricity. That is baseline operating cost. It does not include repairs, replacement parts, or labor to fix failures. The electrical load is immense. Booster pumps lift water from the river or canals into the mainline system. Each pump requires horsepower, which requires kilowatts. That $275,000 figure implies consumption in the range of 2 million kilowatt-hours per year, maybe more, maybe less. The exact number depends on pump efficiency, pressure requirements, lift height, and hours of operation. 2 million kilowatt-hours is a small industrial load. It is the kind of number you see at a factory, not a farm, but industrial irrigation is industrial in every sense: capital-intensive, energy-intensive, maintenance-intensive. A pivot gearbox failure is a crisis. The tower stops moving. The sprinklers keep running. The stationary tower dumps water in one spot, flooding it while the rest of the circle goes dry. yield drops. The gearbox must be replaced, requiring a service call. Service calls need parts, tools, and time. Time means lost irrigation days, which mean lost yield, which means lost revenue. Midnight. The shop mechanic welds a cracked tower, sparks in the dark. The pivot has been down 3 days, waiting on parts from Billings. He patches what he can. Tomorrow the irrigator will restart it, hoping it holds through grain fill. A lightning strike on a control panel can disable an entire pivot. The panel is the brain. It controls motor timing, coordinates tower movement, and monitors pressure and flow. Without the panel, the pivot is dead. Panel replacement requires electricians, scheduling, and shipped parts. The pivot sits idle while you wait. The listing also mentioned $9,500 annually for improvements electricity. That covers shop power, well pumps for domestic water, and building lights. Small compared to irrigation, but necessary. Without shop power, you cannot run welders, grinders, drill presses, or air compressors. Without well pumps, there is no domestic water for crew housing. Water delivery depends on infrastructure beyond the ranch boundary. The Sun River project includes diversion dams and canal systems. Maintenance is shared among water users. Canal banks erode. Silt accumulates. Gates corrode. Concrete cracks. The ranch participates in maintenance assessments, which are separate from electricity costs. They are annual and not optional. The listing noted that the ranch's irrigated acreage is tied to change applications filed with the Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation. Change applications are bureaucratic acknowledgments that water use is under administrative review. Pending applications create uncertainty. Approvals can be delayed. Objections can trigger hearings. Hearings can drag out for years. Energy prices fluctuate. The $275,000 figure is a snapshot. Rates can rise. A 5-cent per kilowatt-hour rate increase adds $100,000 to the annual bill. A 10-cent increase adds $200,000. Enough to erase operating margins. Enough to force hard decisions. Irrigate less. Accept lower yields. Hope for better markets next year. The alternative to electric pivots is diesel pumps. Diesel has its own volatility. Fuel prices swing. Fuel must be stored. Tanks require permits. Deliveries require scheduling. Diesel engines require maintenance, oil changes, filter replacements, injector service. Diesel exhaust creates emissions. Emissions attract regulatory attention. Electric is cleaner, quieter, more reliable in terms of uptime, but electric ties the ranch to the grid. A power outage during peak irrigation season is a crisis. Crops wilt. Yields drop. Revenue shrinks. Backup generators can cover buildings and shop equipment. They cannot cover 11,600 acres of pivots. Drought changes the irrigation equation. In dry years, the ranch may need to run pivots longer or more frequently to compensate for reduced natural precipitation or reduced canal deliveries. More runtime means more power consumption. More power consumption means higher bills. The stress multiplies. The pivot system also ties to water right priority. Senior rights get water first. Junior rights get water if anything is left. The ranch's water rights have priority dates. Those dates determine access. A late priority right can go dry in a drought year. A dry right means a stopped pivot. A stopped pivot means zero yield from that circle. This is the operational tightrope. Irrigate and pay $275,000 a year. Irrigate less and watch revenue drop. Stop irrigating and watch the land value collapse. The pivots are not decoration. They are necessity. They are also exposure. Every year the ranch pays. Every year the ranch hopes the crop covers the cost. Most years it does. Some years it does not. The question is how many bad years the ranch can absorb before the math breaks. Chapter 8. 27 Houses That Come with the Deal. The due diligence package for the Broken O sale included documentation for 27 houses. Not cabins, not bunkhouses, not guest quarters. Houses. 24 were occupied by full-time employees at the time of listing. That means families, spouses, kids. School buses stopped at ranch gates. Propane deliveries, septic system service, well pumps, roof repairs, furnace maintenance, plumbing leaks, electrical issues. Some houses are newer, some are older. The listing did not provide a detailed breakdown of condition or age, but it referred to residences and noted that 24 were occupied. That suggests variation, a mix of older homes that have been on the property for decades and newer structures built as the ranch expanded. Housing is both an asset and an obligation. For incoming employees, ranch housing is a benefit. No rent or reduced rent or housing provided as part of compensation. It reduces the cost of living. It makes ranch jobs more attractive. It solves the problem of finding housing in a rural area where rentals are scarce. But housing is also overhead. Each structure has a property tax assessment. Each structure requires insurance. Each structure accumulates deferred maintenance. A roof that leaks in year 1 becomes a ceiling that sags in year 5. A furnace that runs poorly in year 3 becomes a furnace that quits in year 5. The ranch office in November, the manager reviews property tax bills. 27 houses, each with its own parcel number, each with its own assessment. He adds them up, adds the shop buildings, the barns, the main house. The total runs to 6 figures. He cuts the check and files the receipt. Water systems for ranch housing vary. Some houses may be on individual wells. Others may share a central water system. Wells require permits and maintenance. Pumps fail. Pressure tanks rupture. Water quality issues arise. In Montana, hard water is common. Hard water requires treatment or it damages fixtures and appliances. Septic systems are another layer. 27 houses require septic service. The configuration is not detailed in listing materials, individual systems, shared systems, or a combination. Septic systems require periodic pumping. They fail when not maintained. Failed septic systems create health hazards and environmental violations. Replacement is expensive, thousands of dollars per system. Heating in Montana is essential. Winters are harsh. Temperatures drop well below zero. Houses need reliable heat. That means furnaces, boilers, wood stoves, or a combination. Propane is common in rural areas. Propane tanks require delivery access. Delivery trucks need roads. Roads require plowing in winter. Plowing requires equipment and labor. Sale materials reference the ranch employing as many as 25 families. That number is larger than the 24 occupied houses. The discrepancy could mean some families live off ranch, some families share housing, or the count includes seasonal workers or uses different accounting methods. Regardless, the message is clear. The ranch is a housing provider. That role creates responsibilities, tenant relations, maintenance requests, disputes over condition. Turnover creates vacancy periods. Vacancy periods mean empty houses. Empty houses still cost money. The Moore family donated land for a community center in Augusta and funded local schools and charities. Community goodwill matters when your workforce lives in town and your ranch dominates the local economy. A ranch that treats employees well earns loyalty. A ranch that treats the community well earns goodwill. Goodwill translates to easier hiring, easier permitting, fewer conflicts. But community investment is also an expense. Donations cost money. Community centers require ongoing support. Goodwill does not show up on a balance sheet, but its absence shows up quickly when you need local support for a water right hearing or a zoning variance. Due diligence materials detailed the housing stock, house condition, occupancy agreements, employee at will status versus lease protections, transition plans for current residents, and termination rights without wrongful eviction exposure. These are not abstract questions. They are legal and operational realities. The buyer is not just buying land, they are buying relationships, obligations, and histories. The people in those houses have been there for years. Some have been there for decades. They know the ranch, they know the systems, and they know each other. A new owner who clears out the housing risks, losing institutional knowledge. The irrigator who knows which pivot always gets stuck. The mechanic who knows which welder has a bad ground. The feedlot hand who knows which cattle are temperamental. That knowledge is not in a manual. It is in people's heads. Lose the people and you lose the knowledge. Housing is also a demographic reality. 27 houses with 24 occupied implies 3 vacant units. Vacant units are either recent turnover or deferred maintenance that made them uninhabitable. Either way, the new owner inherits the problem. The listing framed housing as an asset, a turnkey operation, a trained crew, and systems in place. But housing is also a vulnerability. Turnover disrupts operations, vacant units are wasted overhead, and deferred maintenance compounds. The housing stock ages. Eventually, replacement becomes necessary. Replacement means capital investment, which means debt or reduced liquidity. A ranch with 27 houses is not a ranch. It is a housing development that happens to run cattle. Chapter 9. Gibson Dam and the Valve Upstream. The Sun River begins in the mountains. Snowpack accumulates. Spring melt begins. Streams converge. The North Fork and the South Fork meet. The river gathers force. Then it hits Gibson Dam. Built between 1926 and 1929, the Bureau of Reclamation constructed a concrete arch dam 214 feet high with a crest length of 690 feet. Pishkun Reservoir sits behind it, with storage capacity measured in acre feet. The dam was designed for flood control and irrigation delivery. Gibson Dam is part of the Sun River project. The project includes multiple components: diversion dams, main canals, lateral ditches, and smaller reservoirs. The system irrigates roughly 91,000 acres across the Sun River Valley: wheat, barley, and alfalfa, the crops that turn water into taxable revenue for 3 counties. The dam regulates flow. In spring, snowmelt fills the reservoir. In summer, water is released in controlled amounts to meet irrigation schedules. In fall, releases decrease. In winter, the reservoir stores water for the next cycle. The timing is managed by the Bureau of Reclamation in coordination with irrigation districts. For the Broken O, the dam is both provider and constraint. The ranch does not own the dam, does not control the release schedule, and does not set the annual allocation. It participates in a system managed by federal and local entities. Participation means following rules, and rules mean limits. The Greenfields Irrigation District serves part of the Sun River Valley. The district's history traces back to the early 20th century, with homesteaders and federal reclamation policy promising that irrigation would turn arid land into productive farms. That promise was delivered, but with conditions. Irrigation districts are governance structures. They assess water users, maintain canals, allocate water during shortages, mediate disputes, and enforce rules. District elections choose board members who set policy. Policy shapes who gets water and when. A district meeting in Augusta features folding chairs and coffee in styrofoam. An irrigator stands to complain that his pasture went short last week because someone upstream ran over their allotment. The board takes notes, reminds everyone of the delivery schedule, and the meeting continues. The Broken O is a major water user within the district, large enough to have influence, to be watched, and to attract scrutiny when it files a change application or contests a neighbor's claim. The Sun River Project is federal infrastructure, meaning federal oversight. The Bureau of Reclamation owns the dams and major canals, sets operating rules, and can modify those rules. Modifications ripple through the system. A change in reservoir management affects downstream deliveries. A change in delivery schedules affects planting dates. A change in allocation priorities determines who gets cut first during a drought. The ranch's dependence on the dam is absolute. Snowpack in the high country becomes reservoir storage. Reservoir storage becomes canal releases. Canal releases become pivot water. Pivot water becomes alfalfa and grain. Alfalfa and grain become cattle weight. Cattle weight becomes revenue. Break the chain anywhere, and the whole system falters. A light snow year means low reservoir levels, which mean reduced releases, which mean less water for pivots, which means lower yields, which means less feed. Less feed forces the purchase of hay and grain on the open market, erasing feedlot margins. The dam also represents a specific kind of power, federal power. The ability to turn a valve and change the fate of 91,000 irrigated acres rests with the Bureau of Reclamation, which does not manage the dam for the Broken O's benefit. It manages the dam for regional irrigation, flood control, and occasionally for downstream environmental flows. The ranch is one user among many. That position creates exposure. The ranch cannot demand water. It can request, argue priority, and participate in allocation hearings, but it cannot command. The dam upstream is a reminder that even the largest ranch is a participant, not a sovereign. Water in Montana is adjudicated. Every claim goes through a formal legal process. Basin 41K covers the Sun River. The Montana Water Court and the Department of Natural Resources and Conservation run the adjudication. It takes years, sometimes decades, sometimes generations. The adjudication determines who has what rights, how much water, what priority, what season, and what purpose. The process is exhaustive. Claims, objections, evidence, hearings, rulings, appeals. The ranch participates. It must. The water rights are the operating license. The ranch appears in water court records, listed as Broken O Land and Livestock LLC in Basin 41K notices. The legal form is corporate. The entity is an LLC. Not a sole proprietorship or partnership. That structure provides liability protection and signals that ownership is institutional, not personal. The dam is upstream. The ranch is downstream. That relationship is fixed. The ranch can invest in pumps, pivots, and infrastructure, but the dam stays where it is, and the reservoir stays where it is. The fundamental dependency remains. Chapter 10. Paper Water and the Adjudication Game. Montana water law is bifurcated. Rights established before July 1, 1973, are based on prior appropriation, first in time, first in right. The earliest users have the strongest claims. Later users get what is left. Rights claimed after 1973 require permits. Permits are issued by the Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation. Permits require applications. Applications require maps, flow measurements, and statements of purpose. Permits can be denied. Denials can be appealed. Both pre-1973 rights and post-1973 permits must be adjudicated. Adjudication is the formal legal process that determines the validity, extent, and priority of every water right in a basin. Montana's general stream adjudication is the largest water rights adjudication in United States history. It covers the entire state, basin by basin, claim by claim. Basin 41K is the Sun River Basin. The adjudication there is ongoing. It has been ongoing for decades. The end point is not scheduled. The process is methodical. The Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation compiles claims. Claimants submit evidence. The department issues preliminary determinations. Claimants can object. Objectors can object to objections. Eventually, cases go to the water court. The water court holds hearings. The water court issues decrees. Decrees can be appealed to the Montana Supreme Court. The Broken O filed detailed claims. Claim abstracts list points of diversion, flow rates, volumes, seasons of use, and places of use. The claims are public records. Anyone can view them. Anyone with standing can object. A binder on the ranch office desk contains water claim abstracts, maps with highlighted diversion points, and legal descriptions running 3 pages deep. The ranch manager flips through, checks a flow rate, and makes a note for the attorney. Neighbors filed objections. Irrigation districts filed objections. Environmental groups may have filed objections. The listing did not detail the specific objections, but objections are standard. Every major irrigator faces them. The questions follow a pattern: claimed flow rate accuracy, volume supportability, priority date verification, and place of use descriptions. The ranch filed counter-objections. Counter-objections argue that the objections are unfounded or that the objector lacks standing. Standing means the objector must be directly affected by the claim. A downstream user has standing. An upstream user may not. A neighbor with adjacent land has standing. A distant conservation group may not. One water court case from 1999 shows the ranch contesting standing. The case involved objections to the ranch's claims. The ranch argued that certain objectors lacked standing because their water rights would not be affected by the ranch's claimed uses. The case is procedural, dry, and jurisdictional, but it reveals the stakes. Water rights are defended claim by claim, objection by objection, hearing by hearing. The listing noted that the ranch's irrigated acreage is tied to change applications filed with the Department of Natural Resources and Conservation. Change applications are a specific type of administrative action. They request permission to modify an existing water right, change the point of diversion, change the place of use, change the purpose, and change the means of conveyance. A change application is required when a ranch wants to move a diversion point, add new irrigated acres, or switch from flood irrigation to pivot irrigation. The change must be approved. Approval requires notice to adjacent landowners and water users. Notice triggers a comment period. Comments can become objections. Objections can trigger contested case hearings. The hearing process is formal. It includes testimony, cross-examination, expert witnesses, hydrologists presenting models, and engineers presenting maps. Attorneys argue standing and legal standards. The hearing examiner issues a recommendation. The department issues an order. Orders can be appealed. A hearing room in Helena. Wood paneling. The examiner at the bench. The ranch's attorney presents a flow measurement study. The objector's attorney cross-examines the hydrologist. How is the gauge calibrated? What about seasonal variation? The transcript runs 40 pages. Change applications take time, months at minimum, often years. During that time, the ranch operates under uncertainty. Can it proceed with the proposed change? Must it wait for approval? Denials trigger appeals. Appeals add months or years to the timeline. The adjudication process also sets hard limits. A decreed water right has a specific flow rate, a specific diversion point, a specific season of use, a specific place of use. The decree is binding. Exceeding the decree is a violation. Violations can trigger enforcement actions. Enforcement actions can include fines, injunctions, or forfeiture of rights. Forfeiture is the ultimate risk. Montana law allows for forfeiture of water rights if they are not used for a statutory period. The period is currently 10 years. If a right goes unused for 10 years, it can be declared forfeited. The right disappears. The water becomes available for others to claim. This creates a use it or lose it pressure. The ranch must irrigate. It must use its claimed flows. It must use them consistently. It must document the use. Records matter. Irrigation logs. Electric bills showing pivot operation. Crop harvest records showing production. All of these become evidence if a forfeiture claim is filed. The ranch's water rights are its operating license. Without them, the pivots go dry. Without the pivots, the production drops. Without production, the revenue vanishes. Without revenue, the debt service becomes a problem. Without debt service, the ranch becomes a liquidation target. Paper water is real water. The documents in the water court files are not abstractions. They are permissions. Permissions to divert. Permissions to use. Permissions to stay in business. Defending those permissions costs money, attorney fees, expert witness fees, filing fees, travel costs for hearings, time costs for ranch staff who must participate. The costs accumulate. The adjudication is not a one-time event. It is a permanent process. As long as the ranch operates, the water rights will be questioned, defended, and re-adjudicated. A ranch can have all the land in the world, but without water, it is just expensive dirt. Chapter 11. $275,000 in electricity. The listing cited $275,000 per year for irrigation electricity. That number is not a rounding error. It is not an estimate. It is a line item, a recurring cost, a price line moment. $275,000 buys roughly 2 million kilowatt hours, maybe more, maybe less. The exact number depends on the utility's rate structure, but the order of magnitude is clear. This is industrial-scale power consumption, small factory scale, small town scale. Electricity powers the booster pumps that lift water from the Sun River and from canals into the mainline distribution system. The lift height varies. Some pumps lift water a few feet, others lift it dozens of feet. Lift requires energy, and the higher the lift, the more energy required. Electricity also powers the pivot motors that move the towers across the circles. Each pivot has multiple towers, each tower a motor. The motors run continuously during the irrigation season. Continuously means 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for months. Electricity also powers the control panels that manage pressure, timing, and coordination. The panels monitor flow, detect faults, and shut down pivots when problems occur. They are the brain of the system. Without them, the pivots are uncontrolled. An irrigator at dawn checks the panel on pivot 7. A red fault light appears. The display shows motor 3 offline. He radios the shop, needs a mechanic and parts. The circle stops watering. The crop waits. $275,000 is the baseline cost. It does not include repairs, replacement parts, or labor to maintain the system. It is simply the power bill. The cost breaks down by season. Peak irrigation season is late spring through early fall, May through September. During those months, the pivots run almost constantly. Alfalfa requires frequent irrigation. Small grains require irrigation through grain fill. Native pastures benefit from supplemental water if it is available. During peak season, the monthly power bill might reach $50,000 or more. In the off-season, it drops, but it does not disappear. Winter requires well pumps for stock water and domestic water, shop power, building heat, and lights. The $9,500 annual figure for improvements electricity covers some of that, but the total is higher. Energy prices are not stable. They fluctuate with fuel costs, grid demand, and regulatory changes. Montana's electricity mix includes coal, natural gas, and hydroelectric power. The mix changes, and the price follows. A 5-cent per kilowatt-hour rate increase adds $100,000 to the annual irrigation bill. 10 cents adds $200,000. That is a margin squeeze, enough to turn a profitable year into a break-even year, and enough to turn a break-even year into a loss. The ranch does not control energy prices. It can only respond by irrigating less, accepting lower yields, or hoping the market compensates. The alternative is to switch to diesel pumps. Diesel has its own price volatility. Diesel prices spiked in recent years, dropped, then spiked again. Diesel also requires storage infrastructure: fuel tanks, permits, spill containment, deliveries. Diesel engines require maintenance: filters, oil changes, injector service. Diesel exhaust creates emissions, and emissions attract regulatory scrutiny. Electric pumps are cleaner, quieter, and more reliable in the sense that they have fewer moving parts. But electric ties the ranch to the grid. Grid dependency creates exposure. Power outages during irrigation season are a crisis. Crops wilt within days, yields drop, and revenue shrinks. Backup generators can cover essential loads, but they cannot cover 11,600 acres of pivots. The capital cost of generator capacity for that scale would be enormous. Fuel storage for that scale would be a separate crisis. It is not practical. The ranch must rely on the grid. The grid itself is a regulated utility. Northwestern Energy serves much of Montana. The Montana Public Service Commission regulates rates. Rate cases happen periodically. The utility files. The commission holds hearings. Consumer groups intervene. The commission issues orders. Rates adjust, usually upward. The ranch is a ratepayer, a large ratepayer, but still just a ratepayer. It can file comments in rate cases. It can argue for lower rates or different rate structures, but it cannot dictate outcomes. The commission balances many interests: utility financial health, residential affordability, environmental goals. A single ranch, even a large one, is not the priority. Drought changes the electricity equation. In a drought year, the ranch may need to irrigate more intensively to compensate for reduced rainfall and reduced canal deliveries. More irrigation means longer pivot run times. Longer run times mean more electricity. More electricity means higher bills. The stress compounds. The listing cited the $275,000 figure as a known cost. The buyer inherited that cost. The buyer also inherited the risk that the cost would rise. Energy prices change. Equipment ages. Efficiency declines. A 10-year-old pivot motor uses more electricity than a new one. A pump with worn impellers uses more electricity than a fresh pump. The baseline cost is $275,000. The trajectory is upward. This is the price line moment. The scene where recurring cost forces a choice. The ranch must pay the bill, or the ranch must cut irrigation, or the ranch must sell. The Moores paid for years. Then they sold. Kroenke bought. The current owner pays now. The question is how long any owner can pay before the cost exceeds the return. How long before the electricity bill becomes unsustainable. The pivot circles will stop turning eventually. The price line is not a one-time crisis. It is a chronic condition. The pivots drink electricity. The electricity costs money. The money must come from somewhere. The somewhere is revenue. Revenue depends on yield. Yield depends on irrigation. Irrigation depends on electricity. The loop is closed and expensive. A ranch can grow crops without electricity. It did for centuries, but a ranch cannot grow 25,000 tons of alfalfa and 700,000 bushels of grain without electricity. The scale demands the cost. The cost defines the model. The model is not optional, not if the numbers must work. $275,000 per year, every year, without fail. Until the system breaks or the owner quits. That is the deal. That is the machine. That is what a working ranch looks like when it runs on a power bill the size of a small town. Chapter 12. 130. $2.5 million. The broken O was marketed at $132.5 million. That number appeared in the Swanland Company listing. It appeared in media coverage. It became the headline. $132.5 million for 124,000 acres. That is roughly $1,070 per acre. Not cheap, not for Montana ranch ground, but not outrageous either, not for irrigated farmland with water rights and infrastructure. The listing presented the ranch as a turnkey operation. Livestock included 3,500 cows, 800 heifers, 175 bulls. Machinery included tractors, combines, balers, swathers, trucks, pivots, feed mill equipment. Hay and grain inventories included 25,000 tons of alfalfa on hand, grain in bins, feed in storage. The sale closed in late 2012, November 30th. The buyer was widely reported as Stan Kroenke. Kroenke Ranches. Multiple sources confirmed the buyer. The land report. Swanland Company press release. Later news articles about Kroenke's land holdings. Sale terms were not disclosed. Montana is a non-disclosure state. Unless parties voluntarily reveal terms, the purchase price remains private. The $132.5 million figure comes from the listing. Whether it represents the asking price or the final sale price is not documented in public records. But the figure became the accepted number in media coverage. The land report called it the 2012 Deal of the Year. The magazine published a detailed feature in April 2013. The write-up described months of due diligence, multi-county land titles, water rights documentation, state and federal leases, grazing permits, gravel permits, Department of Environmental Quality permits, conservation easements totaling 9,700 acres, hunting leases, background information on 27 houses, cattle records, equipment inventories. The brokers were Swan Land Company for the sellers and Ledbetter and Hall for the buyer. Both firms are well known in Western land brokerage. The listing process reportedly attracted interest from private investors, institutional funds, and corporate entities. The final buyer was an individual with a ranch portfolio, not a fund, not a corporation, a person, a very wealthy person. The deal closed quietly. No public auction, no media circus, just paperwork, title transfers, signatures, wire transfers. Then the ownership changed. The Moore family exited. Kroenke entered. The cattle kept calving. The pivots kept turning. The river kept flowing. A conference room in Bozeman. Closing day. Attorneys on both sides. Buyer's broker. Seller's broker. Stacks of documents. Title policies. Easement exhibits. Lease assignments. The seller signs. The buyer signs. Wire confirmation arrives. Keys exchanged. The meeting breaks. The ranch has a new owner. Media coverage quoted broker Mike Swan. The broken O is its own hedge fund. That line became famous. It captures the logic of the transaction. A ranch this size is not a lifestyle purchase. It is an asset, a productive asset, with multiple revenue streams: cattle sales, hay sales, grain sales, hunting leases, potential for timber or gravel if minerals exist, tax advantages from agricultural use and conservation easements, long-term appreciation potential as land becomes scarcer. But the price also reveals something else. $132.5 million is not paid from ranch earnings. It is paid from wealth accumulated elsewhere. The Moores made their fortune in paint. Kelley-Moore Paint Company, urban business, consumer goods. The ranch was a conversion, capital earned in cities deployed on grass. For Kroenke, the purchase was another conversion, wealth from sports franchises, real estate, and other businesses deployed into land. Kroenke owns the Los Angeles Rams, the Denver Nuggets, the Colorado Avalanche, Arsenal Football Club. His wealth is measured in billions. The broken O is a rounding error in that context, but it is a strategic rounding error. Land, water, production capacity, tax position, legacy narrative. For the Moores, the sale represented an exit, estate planning, succession, relief from management burden. Bill Moore had died by the time the Land Report published its Deal of the Year feature. The magazine's language made that clear. A quote from Swan saying, "If Bill Moore were alive today..." The family exited. The disposition of proceeds is not public. The paint money came full circle, deployed into land, grown into asset value, liquidated back into cash, redistributed to heirs. The sale was not a distress sale. The ranch was not bankrupt. The operation was not failing. The listing emphasized profitability. The marketing emphasized quality, turnkey, productive, legacy property. The sale was strategic, planned, executed with professional help. But every sale has context. The listing does not say why. The press releases do not say. The published articles hint. Moore had died. The family faced succession. Running a ranch of this scale requires decisions. Air management capacity, expertise levels, capital availability, patience for the operational burden. The choice: manage or liquidate. Keep the operation or convert to cash and redeploy elsewhere. The buyer's motivation is clearer. Expansion, portfolio growth. Kroenke already owned ranches in Montana. Cedar Creek Ranch, PV Ranch. Adding the broken O expanded the footprint, consolidated holdings, created economies of scale. shared management, shared equipment, shared expertise. Kroenke Ranches issued a statement through General Manager Sam Connolly. The statement said the organization looked forward to building on the legacy established by the Moore family. Building implies continuity, implies investment, implies long-term ownership. That is the message. That is the reassurance to the community, to the employees, to the partners in the irrigation district. We are not flippers, we are operators. We are here to stay. But legacy and business are not the same. Legacy is emotional. Business is financial. The two can coexist. But when they conflict, business wins. The ranch must perform. It must generate returns. It must justify the capital deployed. If it does not, decisions get made. Staff get cut. Operations get scaled back. Assets get sold. That is business. The $132.5 million price tag is not just a number. It is a bet-y. A bet that the ranch will continue to generate revenue. A bet that water rights will remain secure. A BT that energy costs will remain manageable. A BT that markets will stay strong. A BT that climate will cooperate. A BT that regulation will not tighten. A BT that the machine will keep running. The Moores made that BET for 2 decades. They win. They built asset value. They sold at a profit. Kroenke made the same BET. The outcome is still pending. The ranch is still operating, but the bets are ongoing. Every year is a new role. Every season is a new test. $132.5 million. For a river that does not belong to you. For pivots that cost $275,000 a year to run. For a feedlot that depends on grain prices. For a crew that depends on housing. For water rights that depend on adjudication. For an operation that depends on everything aligning. The price is the headline. The dependencies are the footnotes, but the footnotes are the story. Chapter 13. The Kroenke Consolidation. Stan Kroenke is listed among America's largest private landowners. Exact rankings vary. Different publications use different methodologies, but Kroenke consistently appears in the top 20. Sometimes top 15. The Broken O joined a portfolio that already included Cedar Creek Ranch and PV Ranch in Montana, ranches in Wyoming, ranches in Arizona, and holdings in British Columbia. Kroenke Ranches is the operating entity, a professional ranch management organization. General manager, regional managers, ranch managers, specialists in cattle, crops, wildlife, and land stewardship. The structure is corporate, not a family operation, not a hands-on owner, a portfolio model, a conference call. The Broken O manager on the line with Kroenke headquarters reviewing third-quarter numbers, cattle sales, feed costs, pivot electricity. The regional manager asks about the water court hearing. The Broken O manager reports. Next call scheduled for December. The meeting ends. Kroenke issued a statement after the purchase through Sam Connolly, the general manager. The statement said Kroenke Ranches looked forward to building on the legacy established by the Moore family. It emphasized stewardship, responsible management, long-term thinking, and a balance between production and conservation. Broker commentary described Kroenke's approach as balancing business with ecosystem concerns, including fishery protection, wildlife habitat, and landscape preservation. The framing was careful, avoiding extraction or exploitation, and highlighted stewardship and continuity. But stewardship language also serves business interests. Conservation easements provide tax benefits. Wildlife management can generate hunting lease revenue. Fishery protection can support catch and release tourism. Landscape preservation can enhance property values. Stewardship and profit are not opposites. They can be complementary. The question is, which comes first when they conflict? Land ownership at Kroenke's scale changes regional power structures. A single entity controlling more than 100,000 acres in one area influences county tax rolls. It influences school funding formulas tied to property tax revenue. It influences road maintenance budgets. It influences local elections because ranch employees and their families vote. It influences water politics because a large water user has standing and resources to litigate. The ranch also influences conservation easements. 9,700 acres under easement. Those easements protect habitat and scenic values. They also lock the land into agricultural use. That lock benefits the owner through tax reductions, but it also constrains local planning. The land cannot be subdivided, it cannot be developed, it cannot transition to other uses. In perpetuity. The broken O exists within a larger trend. Billionaire consolidation of Western ranch lands, wealthy individuals purchasing legacy properties, not for production, not primarily, but for portfolio diversification, for tax advantages, for recreation, for prestige, for privacy, for long-term asset appreciation. The economics are compelling. Land appreciates over time. Agricultural land in desirable locations appreciates faster. Irrigated land with secure water rights appreciates fastest. The broken O ticks all boxes. Desirable location. Secure water rights, depending on adjudication outcomes. Productive capacity. Conservation protections that enhance value in certain buyer markets. But consolidation also creates distance. Corporate ownership replaces family ownership. Professional managers replace owner-operators. Quarterly performance metrics replace generational continuity. The ranch becomes a line item in a balance sheet, a data point in a portfolio report, a tax strategy in an estate plan. The listing described the broken O as a turnkey operation. That phrase signals readiness for absentee ownership. The systems are in place. The staff is trained. The infrastructure is maintained. A new owner can step in without disruption, without needing to live on the ranch, without needing to manage daily operations. Hire a manager, review reports, make strategic decisions, collect returns. But turnkey also means extractable. If performance declines, systems can be changed, staff can be replaced, infrastructure can be liquidated, the cattle can be sold off, the equipment can be auctioned, the land can be released to other operators, the water rights can be severed and sold separately, within legal constraints, the houses can be emptied, the ranch can be wound down, or it can be built up. More investment, more equipment, more cattle, more irrigation, expansion into adjacent properties, further consolidation, the model scales, more land, more water, more production, more revenue, more profit. The portfolio grows. The question is whether consolidation stabilizes or hollows. Portfolio ownership could provide deep capital buffers against bad years. It could enable long-term planning horizons and strategic investment. It could bring expertise that improves outcomes. Or it could create pressure for short-term returns. Prioritize profit extraction over community investment. Reduce local voice in decision-making. Concentrate risk by tying multiple ranches to a single owner's financial health. The answer depends on management philosophy. Kroenke's stated philosophy emphasizes stewardship and legacy. But philosophy can change. Management can change. Ownership can change. Estates get settled. Assets get divided. Properties get sold. The broken O has changed hands before. It will change hands again. For now, Kroenke Ranches operates the property, the cattle graze, the pivots turn, the feedlot fills, the crew works, the river flows. The business continues until it does not. Consolidation is not inherently good or bad. It is a structure, a model, a strategy. The outcomes depend on execution, on capital availability, on market conditions, on climate, on regulation, on 1,000 variables that no owner controls. The Moores built a machine. Kroenke bought the machine. Someone else will inherit it. The machine will outlast them all, or it will break. Either way, the land remains. The river remains. The grass remains. Ownership is temporary. The landscape is not. Chapter 14. What a hedge fund looks like on grass. Mike Swan called the broken O its own hedge fund. The statement was meant as a compliment, a description of value, a ranch that generates returns from multiple streams: cattle, crops, hunting, fishing, conservation, tax optimization, long-term appreciation. But the statement also describes a transformation. A ranch stops being a ranch when it becomes a financial instrument, when its primary value is not production but portfolio diversification, when the cattle are not the point but the tax deduction is, when the crops are not the goal but the revenue stream is, when the land is not home but an asset class. The broken O generates revenue from multiple sources: cattle sales from the cow-calf operation, feedlot throughput from finishing cattle, hay sales if production exceeds on-ranch needs, grain sales if the market price exceeds the value of feeding grain on the ranch, hunting leases for deer, elk, pronghorn, and upland birds, fishing access fees if the ranch commercializes the Sun River access, conservation easement tax benefits, depreciation shields on equipment and improvements, agricultural property tax rates that are lower than market rate assessments. Each stream is priced. Each stream is optimized. The ranch manager evaluates options: feed the hay or sell it, finish the calves or market them as stockers, lease hunting or restrict access to preserve trophy quality, open fishing access or maintain privacy. The answers depend on math. Revenue per ton of hay sold versus value per ton fed. Revenue per pound of calf weight at weaning versus revenue per pound at finish minus feedlot cost. Hunting lease income per acre versus foregone grazing days. Each decision has a calculation. Each calculation drives behavior. The ranch office in August. The manager at his desk, spreadsheet open, current hay prices, current cattle prices, feedlot ration costs. He runs the numbers. Selling hay nets more than feeding it this year. He makes the call, marks 300 tons for sale, updates the revenue projection, saves the file. Optimization requires data. Weigh cattle, test hay quality, monitor grain moisture, track equipment hours, record fuel consumption, log labor hours. The data feeds into spreadsheets. Spreadsheets feed into reports. Reports feed into decisions. Decisions feed into next year's plan. But optimization has costs. It requires monitoring. It requires intervention. The cattle must hit weight targets. The pivots must hit yield targets. The staff must hit efficiency targets. Slack is squeezed out. Downtime is minimized. Margin becomes mission. The conservation easements complicate the math. 9,700 acres are permanently protected. That protection preserves habitat. It preserves scenic values. It preserves river corridor. It preserves agricultural use. It also limits subdivision potential. It limits development options. It limits future flexibility. The land is locked. For some buyers, easements are a liability. They constrain use. They reduce speculative value. They prevent the highest and best use in a conventional real estate sense. The land might be worth more if it could be subdivided into ranchettes, developed into a resort, or mined for gravel. The easement forecloses those options. For other buyers, easements are an asset. They provide substantial tax benefits. A conservation easement donation can generate income tax deductions. The deductions can be carried forward for multiple years. The benefit compounds. The easement also reduces property tax assessments. Agricultural use value is lower than market value. Lower assessment means lower taxes. Lower taxes mean better cash flow. The broken O easements were placed by the Moores. That decision shaped the sale. It filtered buyers. It set the terms. The new owner inherited the constraints and the benefits. The buyer's stated goals emphasize stewardship. The easements align with that positioning. They provide tax optimization. They enhance legacy narrative. They signal commitment to conservation. But easements also create rigidity. The ranch cannot pivot to other uses. It cannot subdivide. It cannot sell development rights because they have already been donated. It must remain agricultural, even if agriculture becomes unprofitable, even if climate changes, even if markets collapse, even if water disappears. The lock is permanent. The question is whether easements protect the ranch or freeze it. They could ensure continuity and preserve the land for future generations, or they could prevent adaptation and trap the ranch in a model that no longer works. The answer is both. Easements create stability. They prevent the worst outcomes: subdivision, sprawl, habitat loss. But stability can become rigidity. The land stays agricultural, yet agriculture changes. Drought becomes more frequent. Water becomes more contested. Markets shift. Input costs rise. The fixed model meets changing conditions. The result is stress. A hedge fund can liquidate positions, rebalance portfolios, and pivot strategies. A ranch under easement cannot. It must stay the course, remain agricultural, remain open space. The easement is permanent, irrevocable, binding on all future owners. That permanence is the point. Easements are intended to prevent short-term profit-taking that harms long-term values. They prevent owners from selling out, from cashing in, from subdividing the legacy. They protect the land from the owner. But permanence also prevents adaptation. Irrigation could become unsustainable due to energy costs or water scarcity. Cattle markets could collapse permanently. Climate could make traditional agriculture impossible. The easement still binds. The land must remain agricultural, even if agriculture is no longer viable. This is the hedge fund paradox. The ranch generates returns through optimization, but optimization requires flexibility. Easements reduce flexibility. The ranch is locked into a model optimized for current conditions, but conditions change. The lock remains. A ranch as a hedge fund works as long as all the pieces align. Revenue streams stay strong, costs stay manageable, water stays available, markets stay open, climate stays within normal ranges, and tax benefits stay attractive. But remove one piece and the model wobbles. Remove two pieces and it collapses. The broken O is optimized. But optimization is not resilience. Resilience requires redundancy, slack, flexibility, and the ability to adapt. The easements, the infrastructure, the scale, the integration, all of it optimizes for current conditions. But conditions do not stay current. The hedge fund on grass works until it does not. Then it is just grass, and grass depends entirely on what flows through the ditch. 3 conservation easements, 9,700 acres, placed in 1995, 1997, and 1998, all along the Sun River Corridor, all held by Montana Land Reliance, all permanent. The easements run with the land. They bind the current owner. They bind all future owners. They bind in perpetuity. Permanent means permanent. No sunset clause, no escape hatch, no renegotiation option. The land is locked. The easements protect specific values. Working agricultural use, wildlife habitat, scenic character, open space, riparian corridor. They prohibit subdivision beyond specified limits. They prohibit commercial development unrelated to agriculture. They prohibit activities that would harm the conservation values the easement is designed to protect. The easements do not prohibit ranching. They protect ranching. That is the point. The land stays in agriculture. The ranch continues. The cows graze. The crops grow. The river flows through working landscape, not through subdivisions, not through development, but through ranch. For the Moores, placing the easements was voluntary. They chose to do it. The decision reflected values or strategy or both. Values because conservation easements signal commitment to land stewardship. Strategy because conservation easements provide tax benefits, income tax deductions, estate tax reductions, property tax relief. The income tax benefit is substantial. A donated conservation easement is valued as the difference between the land's fair market value before the easement and its value after the easement. The difference is the value of the foregone development rights. That value becomes a charitable deduction. The deduction reduces taxable income. The benefit can be carried forward for 15 years if the deduction exceeds annual income. For a property the size of the Broken O, the easement donation value could be millions. Exact figures are not public, but the math is straightforward. 9,700 acres along a blue ribbon trout river with Rocky Mountain front views. Before easement, that land has subdivision potential. After easement, it does not. The difference is the deduction. The estate tax benefit is also significant. Estate tax is calculated on the fair market value of assets at death. Conservation easements reduce fair market value. Lower value means lower estate tax. For wealthy families with large land holdings, easements can reduce estate tax liability by millions. The property tax benefit is ongoing. Montana assesses agricultural land at use value, not market value. Land under conservation easement is assessed even lower. Lower assessment means lower annual property tax. The benefit compounds over time, year after year, decade after decade. For the buyer, the easements provide certainty. The land will remain a ranch. The river corridor will remain undeveloped. The wildlife habitat will remain intact. The legacy narrative will remain credible. The buyer knows what they are getting. No surprises. No future subdivision threats from neighbors. No development pressure from adjacent landowners. But easements also constrain management. The ranch cannot pivot to other uses. It cannot subdivide and sell off parcels to generate cash. It cannot develop resort amenities for recreation income. It cannot extract gravel or minerals if doing so would harm conservation values. It must remain agricultural. Even if agriculture becomes difficult, even if economics shift. Montana land. Reliance monitors compliance. The easement holder has the right and the obligation to ensure the terms are followed. That means site visits, documentation reviews, condition assessments. If violations occur, the easement holder can enforce remedies. Remedies can include restoration requirements, financial penalties, Legal action to compel compliance. June. A Montana Land Reliance representative drives the river corridor. The ranch manager accompanies. They stop, check fence lines, check for new structures, review grazing patterns. The representative takes photos, makes notes. Everything complies. They drive to the next section. The monitoring continues. The easements also shaped the sale price. Restricted land sells at a discount compared to unrestricted land. The discount reflects lost optionality. A buyer cannot do with the land whatever they want. They can only do what the easement allows. That constraint reduces the pool of potential buyers and reduces the price those buyers are willing to pay. But the discount is offset by tax benefits. The buyer inherits ongoing property tax relief. The buyer can also claim income tax deductions if they donate additional easements or expand existing easements. The net effect depends on the buyer's tax position. High-income buyers benefit more from deductions. Low-income buyers benefit less. For Kroenke, the easements serve stated goals: stewardship, legacy, balance between business and conservation. The easements provide proof of commitment. They signal that this is not a flip, not a speculative hold. This is a long-term operating asset with conservation protections. But easements also create future risk. What happens if water rights are lost in adjudication? Can the ranch still operate agriculturally without irrigation? The easement does not guarantee water. It only guarantees agricultural use. If agricultural use becomes impossible, the easement still binds. The land cannot be repurposed. It simply fails as agriculture. What happens if climate change makes traditional ranching unsustainable in the Sun River Valley? Longer droughts, shorter growing seasons, more extreme weather, less snowpack. The easement does not prevent climate change. It only prevents non-agricultural development. The ranch must adapt, but adaptation options are limited by the easement. This is the paradox. The easements protect the ranch from the owner. They prevent short-term profit-taking. They prevent subdivision. They preserve the working landscape. But they also protect the ranch from itself. They prevent adaptation. They lock in a model, assuming agriculture in its current form is permanent. That assumption may not hold. Easements are insurance and obligation. Insurance because they protect against development pressure and subdivision. Obligation because they bind future owners to decisions made by past owners. The Moores placed the easements. Kroenke inherited them. The next owner will inherit them, and the next. The chain is unbroken. The easement holder, Montana Land Reliance, also has obligations. The organization must monitor compliance, enforce terms, and exist in perpetuity to fulfill its role. If the organization dissolves, the easements transfer to another qualified holder. The easements survive organizational changes, ownership changes, and everything except legal challenge. Legal challenge is rare and difficult. The paradox is permanent protection. Protection means stability, but stability can become stasis. The land cannot change. The use cannot change. The model cannot change. The easement assumes that the values protected today will remain valuable tomorrow. That assumption requires faith. Faith that water will remain. Faith that climate will cooperate. Faith that markets will endure. Faith that agriculture will survive. Faith is not certainty, but easements are. They are permanent, irrevocable, binding. They protect. They constrain. They ensure continuity. They prevent adaptation. They are the answer and the problem, both at once, forever. Chapter 16. What Survives the Sale. The Broken O is still a working ranch. Cattle still graze, pivots still turn, the feedlot still fills, the river still flows through 20 miles of cottonwood corridor. The operation continues. Ownership changed, the Moores exited, Kroenke entered. The corporate entity is now Broken O Land and Livestock LLC. That name appears in Montana Water Court notices, it appears in adjudication records, it appears on state lease renewals, it appears in county tax records. The entity is the owner is the operator is a portfolio company within a larger ranch holding structure. The staff changed. Some employees stayed. Loyalty, housing, lack of other opportunities in a rural area. Some employees left. Retirement, better offers, uncertainty about new ownership. New management brought new priorities. Some positions were eliminated, some were added. The faces changed, the work continued. The cattle breed may have changed. The Moores ran a specific breeding program. Kroenke ranches may run a different program, different bull genetics, different selection criteria, different marketing strategy. The herd adapts. The numbers remain roughly similar. 3,500 cows, give or take, 800 heifers, 175 bulls. The scale persists even if the details shift. The crop rotation may have adjusted. Different agronomist, different soil test results, different market opportunities. More barley, less wheat, more alfalfa, less dry land. The acreage stays similar. 13,000 irrigated, 3,000 dry land. But the specific crops planted each year respond to markets, weather, and management philosophy. The hunting lease terms may have changed. New policies on guest access, new pricing structures, new limitations on harvest, or expanded access, or restricted access. The specifics are not public, but hunting leases generate revenue. Revenue incentivizes access. Access must be managed. Management requires decisions. Decisions reflect ownership priorities. The water rights remain contested. Basin 41K adjudication continues. Claims are filed. Objections are lodged. Hearings are scheduled. Decrees are issued. Then appealed. The process grinds forward. Slowly, the ranch participates. It must. The water rights are the operating license. Lose the rights and the pivots go dry. The pivots cannot go dry. So the ranch participates. It files documents. It attends hearings. It hires attorneys. It pays fees. Year after year, decade after decade, the adjudication is permanent work. The conservation easements remain in force. 9,700 acres along the Sun River corridor, held by Montana Land Reliance, monitored for compliance, enforced when necessary. The easements do not change, they do not expire, they do not renegotiate, they simply exist, permanent, binding, protecting, constraining. The irrigation system still requires $275,000 per year in electricity. The current figure is not publicly disclosed. Power rates rise, equipment ages, efficiency declines, the cost increases, the invoice arrives, the payment is made. The pivots keep turning. The cost is non-negotiable. Irrigate or quit. Those are the options. The ranch chooses to irrigate. For now. The housing stock still stands. 27 houses, some maintained, some deferred. The occupied count is unknown. The staff size is not public. The turnover rate is not reported. The ranch does not publish employment data. But the houses remain. They age. Roofs wear out. Furnaces fail. Septic systems need service. The maintenance burden continues. The costs accumulate. The sale was called a landmark transaction, a deal of the year, a legacy property changing hands. The land report published a feature. Brokers gave interviews. The story entered the regional lore. But the story is not the reality. The story is marketing. The reality is operations. Cattle, crops, water, labor, costs, revenue. Repeat. Legacy is not permanence. Legacy is what survives the handoff. The Moores built a machine. Kroenke bought the machine. Someone else will inherit it. Each owner adds, each owner subtracts, each owner adapts, or fails to adapt. The machine changes, slowly, incrementally, until it is no longer the same machine, or until it breaks. The Sun River keeps running. Water flows from Gibson Dam through the valley into the Missouri. The river predates the ranch. It will outlast the ranch. It flows regardless of ownership, regardless of easements, regardless of adjudication, regardless of electricity costs, regardless of cattle prices, regardless of legacy narratives. The river flows. The pivots keep spinning circles. Green against brown, visible from space, visible from the highway, visible to anyone who looks. The circles are the signature, the proof of investment, the proof of ambition, the proof that water and capital can turn semi-arid prairie into production at scale. The circles will spin until the electricity stops, or until the water stops, or until the owner stops paying. Then they will rust. They will sit. They will become artifacts, monuments to a specific era, an era of cheap power, abundant water, patient capital. That era is closing, maybe slowly, but closing. The feedlot keeps finishing cattle, pens filled, feed delivered, cattle weighed, cattle shipped, revenue recorded, costs deducted, margin calculated. Repeat. The feedlot is proof of integration, proof that the system can close the loop. Calves born on grass finished in pens, fed with ranch-grown grain. The loop works until input costs exceed output value. Then the loop breaks. Then the feedlot empties. Then the system unwinds. The numbers keep adding up until they do not. The question was never whether the ranch could work. The question was always who carries the cost when it stops working. The Moores carried it for 2 decades. They exited at a profit. Kroenke carries it now. The outcome is pending. The ranch still operates. The machine still runs. But machines require maintenance. Machines require fuel. Machines require operators who understand them. Lose any piece, and the machine falters. The river was here first. The river will be here last. Everything else is temporary. The pivots, the cattle, the houses, the easements, the ownership, the legacy, all of it is temporary. The land remains, the water remains, the grass remains, not forever, but longer than any human claim. The broken O is not eternal. It is a moment, a configuration, a set of choices made by specific people at a specific time under specific conditions. The conditions are changing. The configuration will change. The moment will pass. Something else will follow. Maybe another ranch. Maybe something different. Maybe nothing. The land will tell. For now, the ranch works. The cattle graze. The pivots turn. The feedlot fills. The crew works. The bills get paid. The river flows. The machine runs. That is enough. That is all any ranch can ask. Not forever, just for now. One more season, one more year, one more cycle, until it stops. The broken O is a working ranch. Working means it has not stopped. Yet.